Gallifrey Forever 97 here. Now with Series 9 mere weeks away, I thought it would be a great idea to rank all the episodes of Series 8 from worst to best, giving my opinions and thoughts on each episode. And so I'll be going through the good points and the bad points of each episode, why I've ranked them in this particular order. As I say, it was really difficult to rank these episodes, I say, because each one, even in The Frost of the Night, wasn't like the worst thing ever. So as I say, with these episodes, they really set a sort of bar for themselves. So even though sort of episode is lower down the list, I think this series overall set a really good sort of high standard of episodes. And so before I get into it, just to clarify, I say these are my own opinions, so hopefully they won't inflict yours, but I'd also have to know what your episode rankings are for Series 8, so please feel free to comment down below your episode rankings for this series. So without further ado, let's go into darkness and delve into my Series 8 episode rankings. Cue title. Number 12. In the Forest of the Night. So at number 12 of my episode rankings we have In the Forest of the Night. This is the first time critically awarded writer Frank Cottrell Boyce, who's quite famous for writing children's fiction, has wrote an episode of Doctor Who. And by judging by the response of this episode, might be his last. So this episode felt like could have really nicely slotted into Series 5, sort of the massive fairy tale aspect. There's really fascinating ideas and concepts with the sort of trees growing and taking over the world, but I feel they weren't very executed very well. For example, there was like no one where the Doctor and Clara and all the kids were, and they were in the middle of London. I say this episode did really have potential. There was a lot of fantastic ideas and concepts sort of floating in the episode, but they sort of drowned and didn't really surface. Wasn't very realistic either. Yes, I noticed Doctor Who is meant to be, obviously you can't really take it too seriously. However, where they were meant to be in the middle of London and there was just no one there. I know the government said in the episode that they have to stay inside, but I'm sure a few people, if not one other person, would sort of come out and have a look, do you know what I mean? Also, this episode is not canon, because on a bus there was a Doctor Who poster. Yes, a Doctor Who poster. Why? I don't know, but that just really took me out of the episode. When I saw that next time trailer, I was like, what? No, they must be joking. It's not April Fool's, is it? The child actors were actually okay. I say, compared to previous child actors, like the ones from Series 7, the brother and sister Clara was sort of babysitting, they weren't too bad. Like there was a couple which I thought, oh god. But I say they've improved. See, it's not an absolute terrible episode like stories like Love and Monsters and Fear Her, but the quality of episode series was really high, and this one just didn't reach the high standard some of these episodes have set this series. So yeah, at number 12, In the Forest of the Night. Number 11. Kill the Moon. So at number 11 we have Kill the Moon. This is the first time writer again, Peter Harness, who's actually writing the Zygon 2 part of the Series 9. As in this episode, there's some really intense and scary moments, reminding me very much of sort of the horror aspect of the Hinchcliffe era of Doctor Who. I say the fight between the Doctor and Clara was played out absolutely brilliantly, and it was nice to see there's actual consequence of the Doctor's actions towards Clara. Like, I'm glad they sort of did address that, and there were some sort of effects of that. Wasn't played out very well in further episodes, but in this episode it was set out very well. So the opening opens up really interestingly. Like it's meant to obviously be sort of later in the episode, but they obviously show it as the opening, and it does really sort of gauge your interest. And then when we actually get to it, it didn't really live it up to it. So there's a main heavy focus on sort of the decision making of whether to destroy the moon or let it live. So this came across as very forced and unrealistic. I didn't really felt it sort of left the audience to make their own judgment, and more or less sort of talking down to them, telling them rather than being the audience allowed to think for themselves. I like the undertone, the message of this story was basically abortion. Again, Doctor Who, a family picture. I say the moon itself, when they're out on the moon, that looked absolutely incredible. When they filmed that abroad, and I say that was really convincing. You really just felt you were on the moon. And finally, yeah, the moon was an egg. Need I say more? At number 10, Time Heist. So at number 10 we have Time Heist, the third story written by Steve Thompson, which actually this is probably the best out of the three stories he's previously written for Doctor Who. I really like how this story was told. It starts off sort of the Doctor and Clara having a bit of banter, and he picks up the phone and it just goes all sort of to hell. And they don't know what's happening, and we sort of get placed in their shoes, and as they sort of learn what's going on themselves, as they say, the audience learns as well. I really like that aspect. I say it was very mysterious, and it did keep you guessing. Even though the Doctor being the architect was a bit predictable, the other aspects were really good. I really like the Teller. It was a really cool creature, a really nice practical effect, which makes a change. I'm glad sort of Doctor Who's still doing the practical effects. And sort of how it killed you, and then they sort of shown that with the guy's brains being sucked out, and it was like soup, and it was absolutely really grim to see that. I didn't really enjoy the Hyde sort of ending with, oh, it was all a love story. I didn't really like that in Hyde. I didn't really like that when they do that again. There's a really funny shot when they're just, these two naked tellers are sort of walking on this like alien beautiful planet. The Doctor and Clara just sort of staring. It's meant to be some lovely moment, and you just see these like two naked tellers walking along. Only in Doctor Who. Yeah, Miss Del Fox was a sort of okay villain. There was sort of a nice twist at the end. It was actually her that sort of organised it all. Well, for the Doctor to rob the bank, but I'd say she had an absolutely brilliant persona. But apart from that, there was just nothing else to her really. Yeah, the sub-characters were really cool. They sort of served their purpose and then died, and then they came back at the end. But yeah, they're pretty entertaining. Also, there was some absolutely great editing in this episode. It was really nicely paced, and there was some really unique transitions between different shots. Now, I say this episode looked absolutely brilliant. The bank itself, the design of it was absolutely brilliant. At number 9, Deep Breath. So at number 9 we have Deep Breath, written by Stephen Moffat, and the debut story of the 12th Doctor. As this episode really nicely set up the 12th Doctor, sort of how totally different he was to Matt Smith, and I really like this sort of, that came across very well. Clara was pretty okay. It was cool to see her sort of left her own devices with the Paternoster gang. But the first bit of the episode, she forgot everything she knew about the regeneration stuff. Like, she pretty much seen every Doctor, and then she was sort of having it all, oh, what are we going to do about the regeneration thing? So the Paternoster gang really played out nicely for sort of humour and action, and they served the purpose of sort of carrying the episode whilst the Doctor was absent really well. I said there was a dinosaur, and that was just fair. It was really thrown in to sort of open the episode like, oh, massive dinosaur, oh my god. I don't think I was impersonating anybody reacting to it, but the half-faced man was a really creepy villain. I really loved the fact that we didn't know his true fate, whether the Doctor pushed him or he jumped. I really like that aspect of the sort of letting the audience sort of think, oh, did he or did he not? I hope they don't sort of reveal that in possibly series 9 or later in Capaldi's era, like they did with sort of like the crack in the hotel room in the God Complex. So Matt Smith had a cameo. It wasn't really needed. Like, obviously it was, the purpose of it was trying to convince Clara to stay on, and that, oh, it was still the Doctor. But apart from that, for sort of benefiting Clara, I think it was very unnecessary. You always get a sort of typical post-regeneration humour, which is sort of always required with a fancy sort of opening era story. There's also a really nice scene with the Doctor and a tramp where he's sort of reminiscing, going, oh, have I seen this face before? And that was a really awesome scene. So yeah, Deep Breath, dinosaurs and tramps. Number 8, Death in Heaven. So yeah, Death in Heaven at number 8. Now obviously this is the second part of the finale. The first part, Dark Water, will be later on in the ranking. But yeah, with Death in Heaven, there was a lot of ideas and concepts sort of really nicely built up in the first part. And I feel this part didn't really deliver as well. As I say, they weren't brilliantly executed and not resolved very well. I love the horror element of sort of bringing back the dead with Cybermen. It's a really interesting, different way sort of upgrading humans into Cybermen. Clara being the Doctor. Maybe it was a joke a bit too far. Like, they even made the whole title sequence dedicated to that sort of joke thing. I say Danny's character had a really superb ending, being converted into a Cyberman. I say it was a really gruesome and horrible reveal, but at the end, when he did his little speech, you felt sort of better for the character after just seeing him be a Cyberman. I said I preferred Missy in this part than when she was sort of in part 1. As we know by this point, she obviously is the master. The reveal of her actually being the woman in the shop. Yeah, so she just sort of brought the Doctor and Clara together just because. That was pretty much it. Osgood's death was a really cool moment. That was really nicely sort of done, even though the two guards are pretty much useless behind Missy. It's sad to know now that obviously she's coming back. I'm interested to see how and why, but it's only a matter of weeks now, so I think the Am I a Good Man storyline for the Doctor was really nicely sort of showcased and resolved, with him sort of flashbacking to different events where he's had to question himself being a good man throughout the series. That was really nicely played out. We also got to see the Brigadier as a Cyberman, which personally for me I thought was an absolute sort of disgrace to both the character and Nicholas Courtney, as the actor himself is dead. It was quite a nice touching moment, but the fact that the actor is dead himself, I thought it wasn't the best way to go around it. I love the Doctor's rage when Missy sort of tells him to go look for Gallifrey at the original coordinates, and it's not there, and he just sort of lets all his aggression out, and it's a really powerful scene. I say it's one of my highlights of the many different scenes with our 12th Doctor. Yeah, and the ending, it was just a bit. Like, obviously at the time it was just like, oh, they can't leave it there, and then you get Sander going, oh no, they're not going to leave it there. So yeah, Death in Heaven, it was a pretty okay finale, but what had been set up in part 1, it failed to deliver here, and didn't resolve the few plot threads very well. Number 7, Robot of Sherwood. So yeah, at number 7 we have Robot of Sherwood. I thought it was a really nifty episode of Series 8. It was really nice to see how Robin Hood actually fits into the Doctor universe. I think that was nicely told and sort of sets up for like other fictional characters as well. Highlight of this episode was the great banter and relationship between the Doctor and Robin. There's some really funny one-liners between the two. I like how Clara was sort of just in the middle of them, sort of on a high level, just sort of observing them, how silly they are. I say the Sheriff was very majestic and evil. I would say a bit panto, but I think that'd be going a bit too far. Also we had the robots, which were a great design, but say with many sort of robots, they sort of have this human leader, and they weren't very that unique as a sort of characters, but they say they were absolutely brilliantly designed. Would have loved to see more of the Merry Men. I say they're an absolutely funny and brilliant aspect with the scenes they're in, and also love the sort of advice Robin Hood gave to the Doctor near the end.
I'm not a hero.
Well, neither am I. But if we both keep pretending to be, perhaps others will be heroes in our name. Perhaps we will both be stories. And may those stories never end.
Overall, better fairy tale story than In the Frost of the Night. Number 6, The Caretaker. Number 6 with The Caretaker, a really fun, amusing and a bit light-hearted, but there were some really nice character pieces in here. I'd say it was great to see the sort of aspect of the Clara sort of bouncing up the Doctor's life and her normal life with sort of the Coal Hill School stuff. So Scovel's Blitzer looked absolutely brilliant. I say, from the waist down, when I had sort of like wide shots of the full creature, it didn't look as great, but sort of from the waist up, it put it in a better light. Danny's sort of realisation of sort of what Clara's been up to was really nicely played out. It started out really funny and then it sort of just changed really serious. It was also nice to get a look at the sort of the different characters in sort of Coral School, particularly the one who looked like the 11th Doctor and the 12th Doctor got confused with Clara, and that's who he thought that Clara's dated. That's really funnily played out and really funnily resolved as well. So we also got a better look at Danny and Clara's relationship, and also got to sort of see the foundations of sort of him giving Clara advice about how far the Doctor can push her, which is obviously comes to a bit of a head in the next episode. So yeah, The Caretaker, really fun little story, some really great character moments. Number 5. Into the Dark. So number 5 we have Into the Dark. I felt this story brought the Daleks back to tip-top in shape. I thought it was a really clever and interesting story of sort of going inside the Dalek. So at this point when I watched it, it sort of felt like what else can they do with the Daleks? And they've took a really nice new spin on them. So there weren't really many new ideas sort of laid out on the table. But I think that was important to sort of revitalise the Daleks' sort of presence and premise, which I felt sort of lost its way a bit. In this episode we also got more of a look how sort of more unsympathetic and less of taking rubbish the 12th Doctor is, compared to his other previous incarnations. As a lot of people also compare this story to 2005 Dalek, which I do believe is probably the superior story. However, I do think this is a good sort of homage to that story. I say Rusty was absolutely brilliant Dalek. I'll say there were some absolutely great action pieces in this as well. And when he's sort of blowing up all the other Daleks, it's pretty much the equivalent to Dalek porn. But I would have liked to have sort of delved into more of whether there can be a good Dalek. Obviously they sort of ruled it out, but I say that it was bounced up in the air near the end, and it was sort of blamed on some sort of radiation leak inside Rusty. However, I would have liked to sort of delve into that, and they might return to that idea if Rusty returns. He's skulking about somewhere in the universe. At number 4. Listen. So at number 4 we have Listen, written by Stephen Moffat. This story is a really inventive, creepy and intense story. It was nicely centred around sort of Clara and Danny's day, which kept the story very grounded. There's also a brilliant monologue from the Doctor at the beginning, sort of questioning whether we're alone and whether there's somebody listening. It really sets up the sort of tone of the episode fantastically. I'd say there's absolutely great highlights in this episode. We got to see the Doctor as a child. Also the realisation that where he was the barn from the 50th, and we also get a throwback to the War Doctor. I'd say I wasn't too pleased with sort of the resolution, that it was all entirely in the Doctor's head. Like, it would have been nice if they sort of opened it up a bit more, to sort of say, well, is there something there? Is it you sure it's entirely in the Doctor's head? As it was sort of like the way they sort of said, oh, it was entirely in the Doctor's head, didn't really make sense to the episode. Like, there were some aspects of it which would have been in the Doctor's head. Everybody else sort of saw it. So it's quite a confusing explanation. So it would have been nice if they did leave it open, then people could sort of say, well, this is what I think, and do you know what I mean? Or we could have just got a proper explanation from Moffat. So, entering the top 3 now. At number 3. Dark Water. So at number 3 of Dark Water, part 1 of the Series 8 finale. I'll say this story has one of the most shocking and depressing Doctor Who openings I think we've ever seen. I say that really caught us off guard when we first saw that, and it was just like, oh, Danny's dead from the beginning. There was also that great intense scene between Clara and the Doctor, sort of her sort of threatening the Doctor to go back and save Danny, and sort of her thinking she's thrown the keys in. Even though it was a dream, it was a really intense and well delivered scene. I say Seb was an absolute brilliant highlight. Like, I really did enjoy him in part 2, but in this episode, he's really a highlight of the episode. I say all this episode is sort of just build up. We also sort of get the sort of Missy reveal as well, which I think was sort of built up and revealed very well. However, I don't think she was very menacing in that episode. Like, and she was manipulative, but I don't think in that episode she came across as sort of master-like. So they did improve that in part 2, and it will be nice to sort of see how they develop her in the Series 9 opener. But no, this was absolutely brilliant. Part 1 to a finale, built up some absolutely great concepts and ideas. Just sadly it wasn't executed in the second part very well. Number 2. Mummy on the Orient Express. So number 2 we have Orient Express. The first story written by new debut writer Joe Matheson, who I think was probably the best writer of this series. It was a really fascinating, clever and intense story. I'd say the mummy creature was absolutely brilliant, really terrifying, and as soon as you knew 66 seconds had started, someone was going to die. I really didn't like how they sort of had to have the 66 seconds in the corner. So I think obviously it was sort of a nice visual piece, but I thought it sort of detracted from the intensity of some of the scenes. So the character Perkins, who was played by Frank Skinner, was absolute delight. Really funny stuff. I like how at the end he sort of got an offer, sort of maintain the TARDIS for the Doctor, but he kindly refused. There was some really nice character moments, and sort of obviously this was sort of meant to be the episode that Clara was leaving. And they really, I would say, it does really play out quite nicely, and there's some really nice sort of character sort of pieces. I love the conversation between Clara and that woman, explaining the Doctor. But obviously at the end it's just sort of like, oh, what the hell of it? Nah, we'll just stay on for a bit. Yeah, Danny's fine with it, sure. So the only fault I really have with this episode is probably the resolution was a bit rushed. I remember watching it for the first time, I was like, what, are we at the end already? My god. So number 2, Mummy on the Express. So before I reveal number 1, here's a quick reminder from 12 to 2. So number 12 we had In the Frost of the Night. At number 11, Kill the Moon. Number 10, Time Heist. Number 9, Deep Breath. Number 8, Death in Heaven. Number 7, Robot of Sherwood. Number 6, The Caretaker. Number 5, Into the Dalek. Number 4, Listen. Number 3, Dark Water. Number 2, Mummy on the Express. And at number 1, Flatline. So my number 1 episode of Series 8 was Flatline. I felt this story was very unique, quite damp in places, a really awesome atmosphere, but it was absolutely brilliant standalone story. I said absolutely amazing aspects of this episode. I said the TARDIS shrinking. I didn't realise they'd go that small and sort of turn into sort of like a cube. I say Clara got some really awesome stuff to do in this episode. I say it could be sort of said as a Doctor Light episode, but he was pretty much, do you know what I mean? He was still there. As sort of Clara was sort of taking the lead, pretending she was the Doctor, which is sort of allowed to show sort of independence, her humour, and her sort of leadership skills. I love like at the end as well, she's sort of like, oh, I made a good Doctor, and he's like, oh, that's nothing to do with it. I think Reezy was an absolutely great addition to the episode, helping the sort of story continue on. I'm also glad to hear that he's returned for Series 9, some absolutely great news. And also Capaldi's speech, that was absolutely brilliant, sort of I am the Doctor, the man who stops the monsters. That was absolutely superb. Sort of something missing we didn't have in Deep Breath, which I feel, let's say, it could be sort of a cliche thing, but I think that speech was perfectly timed and executed, and it fitted really, really well. So yeah, Flatline at number 1. So that was my Doctor Who Series 8 episode ranking. Thank you very much for watching, guys and girls. Feel free to comment down below your Series 8 episode ranking. We're really interested to see sort of how sort of diverse and different people's opinions. This was great seeing it on the previous ranking video, sort of the Modern Who series ranking video. There were some absolutely brilliant lists, so thanks for sharing and feel free to do it again on this video. Couple updates before I go. One, yes, I am doing a hashtag Mission Dalek entry. It will probably be done a couple of days before the actual sort of deadline ends, but I am doing a Mission Dalek submission, so look out for that. I didn't really have an idea for it, and then I sort of woke up and I thought, oh, that would be so good. So and I don't think I've seen anybody else do it yet, so I'm glad it's a sort of unique one. Also got a couple of reviews coming, and also be doing some sort of the stuff when Series 9 comes out, and a couple of trailers as well. Also, I'd like to thank Doctor Who TV for featuring my Magician Apprentice trailer on their website. So it was featured on the site, the view count went up and up and up. It was about 600, 700, which I was really pleased with, and now it's sort of just peaked out to over 4,000. So thanks again for everybody for sharing and liking, and I'm glad people enjoyed it. So yeah, as always guys, please comment, like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter down in the description below. Again, let me know your Series 8 episode rankings, and let me know, do you disagree with me, do you agree with me? Obviously my list is going to be different to others, or it could be the same, who knows. But if you want me to do any other sort of ranking videos, post your thoughts or suggestions in the comment section below. So as always guys, thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.